Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and we just got news that Nintendo is contracting Bandai Namco to put together some sort of remaster or remake of a 3D action game. What could this game be? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now before we jump into things, let me first very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on the screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe or perhaps consider joining as a member. So basically, there are 3 different job listings that have popped up of Nintendo contracting Bandai Namco to put together a remaster remake of a 3D action game. And there's a few different positions for that. That is all we know at this point in time. But point is, Bandai Namco, a huge, big developer / publisher, is putting together some sort of remaster remake and is being contracted by Nintendo to do it. So what could this game be? Well, I guess there is a possibility that perhaps Nintendo and Bandai Namco came together and decided that they would partner up in order to bring back some sort of old Bandai Namco game. That is a possibility. But it's also possible, and I would say more likely, could be wrong there, but I would say more likely, since Nintendo is contracting Bandai Namco to do this, that this is a remaster remake from an old Nintendo game. Now, what's fascinating is that it's a 3D action game. So what 3D action game that has come out in the past and Nintendo would want to be remade or at least remastered by Bandai Namco? Some people might argue The Legend of Zelda. I don't think it's The Legend of Zelda, and let me explain why. 1. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, all the 3D Zeldas, have already been remade or remastered. Now maybe they want to do it again for Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, but then why not just go back to Grezzo, the initial developer, who already has a good quality history of putting together Zelda remakes and remasters, not to mention they've already done some in HD with Link's Awakening Remake. So I don't think there's anything related to The Legend of Zelda. Nintendo already has their dedicated developer for remaking and remastering those when it's not internal Nintendo. And I think that's the important point to be made here. This is not being done internally by Nintendo. So we gotta think about franchises that Nintendo would be willing to outsource to get this game to be remastered or remade. Another thing to consider here, it has to be a 3D action game, right? So this is not going to be something from the NES era or the Super Nintendo era. Potentially the Nintendo 64 era or the GameCube era or the Wii or Wii U. Those are possibilities. I would say Wii U is pretty unlikely though, because that would also probably be more of a basic remaster and done by a smaller developer, not something as big as Bandai Namco. But it shouldn't just be narrowed down by it being 2D or 3D, but also the actual genre. It's gotta be action. Now I've seen a lot of people say action adventure. From the translations I'm seeing, it's just saying action, but action adventure and action are fairly close to each other, so I won't really nitpick there. Legend of Zelda could qualify as an action game, or Bayonetta for example. So anything that kind of fulfills the action department, not something like F-Zero that would be more of a racer, or something like Xenoblade that would be more of an RPG. It's got to be more of an action, maybe action adventure game. So that does narrow things down a little bit. And it probably won't be something like Zelda or Mario, because again, that would be done by internal Nintendo. So it's got to be one of Nintendo's smaller franchises. Perhaps Metroid. Metroid would fall under 3D action, correct? It's more of a 3D first-person adventure. So there's a bit of a genre difference there, but of course these terminologies could be a bit vague here. But Nintendo already has Retro Studios, and if the reports are true, Retro Studios is already handling the remake for Metroid Prime, and of course also Metroid Prime 4. So they have their hands full there, and there's not really a need to do that. But what about Metroid Prime Hunters? Is it possible they're going back to the Nintendo DS and bringing back Metroid Prime Hunters as an online multiplayer game for the modern era by remaking that? Could that be where they're going here? I think there's a small possibility of that, but again, fairly small. Metroid Prime 4 and Metroid Prime, I think, are the big focuses here. I don't think they're going to be remaking Hunters. If anything, they'll probably make a new Hunters in the future, but you know, I'm at least mentioning it as one of the many possibilities here. Ultimately though, I just don't see it being anything Metroid related because they already have both Mercury Steam and Retro Studios working on Metroid games. It's not necessary. But I do think we're kind of on the right track here when we're thinking of outside developers to bring back more of a older franchise that's not too relevant right now. Another great example of this is the developers for Shantae that are working on Advance Wars. That is literally a remake of 2 old Advance Wars games. So Nintendo could be doing something similar here, but with a bigger developer and publisher, Bandai Namco. So what other franchise could Nintendo be outsourcing to Bandai Namco to have be remade here? I think something bigger than Advance Wars, which is why they're going to a bigger developer, but definitely again, not Metroid, Mario, or Zelda. So what could those be? Maybe Donkey Kong? Donkey Kong has been dormant for a while, but also reportedly, Nintendo is handling a new Donkey Kong game as we speak. So I don't think it's that, and if they were to be remaking a 3D action game, the only one that would really fit would be Donkey Kong 64, and I don't think they're going to go that far back. I did mention N64 as a possibility, but to remake an N64 game, that would require a great deal of significant effort, and unless it's like a basic remaster that's just for like some sort of eShop release, I doubt they're doing that, especially for Donkey Kong 64, which admittedly is not considered to be the most high quality of Donkey Kong experiences, and if they're going to be bringing back Donkey Kong, they're probably going to be focusing on that internal project as opposed to remastering or remaking Donkey Kong 64 from an outside developer. Now, a number of people have been bringing up Star Fox as a possibility. Now, what's interesting about Star Fox is that most of these Star Fox games are basically a retread or a reimagining or a remake of the initial Star Fox or Star Fox 64. Even Star Fox Zero is basically a retelling of that basic Star Fox story. So for Nintendo to outsource to Bandai Namco to make another Star Fox, that to me is a little strange because most of the Star Fox series is already sort of a retread in some way. I feel like if they're going to be contracting Bandai Namco, it's going to be to make a brand new Star Fox game. But some people have been alluding to the possibility of it being Star Fox Adventures. Now, if it's Star Fox Adventures, that would be a different experience, but that's also not quite the true Star Fox experience either. It's more of a different take on the Star Fox series, and in my opinion, it would be a bit strange for Nintendo to go to Bandai Namco and ask them to make or remake or remaster this old Star Fox game that was already sort of a different style of Star Fox gameplay. If they're going to go back to Star Fox, it would be kind of bringing back something more that is very clearly the Star Fox style of gameplay, but at the same time, given how many remasters or remakes they've already done of Star Fox, I have a hard time believing they're going to be doing another one through Bandai Namco. So in my opinion, I just don't think this is the action game we're sort of looking to get here. But, you know, it is possible, of course. And there is Star Fox Assault, which actually would be a really good option to remaster or remake. It has a good, decent multiplayer, a pretty interesting campaign. Visually, it's pretty good, so a remaster could help bolster it up a fair bit, and giving it online play might make it pretty substantial. So that is an option. But what I have in mind for what would be the ideal 3D action game for Nintendo to contract Bandai Namco to do is Kid Icarus Uprising. When I heard of this information, that was the very first game that came to mind immediately. But the reason I'm thinking Kid Icarus Uprising isn't because I've seen other people suggested it, isn't because it's what I want the most, it's because it's what I think makes the most sense. And of course it could be something else, but let me explain why exactly I think this makes the most sense. This game is a game that deserves to be remastered or remade. It's a game that there's been a bit of an outcry for to be done properly on a console-like experience like the Nintendo Switch. Kid Icarus Uprising suffered for being just on the 3DS because you didn't have true dual analog control, and it was very hard to control the game with just the touchscreen and the slider. So it being on a proper console would allow it to run and play a lot better, and this would sort of rectify the biggest issue and complaint people had with Kid Icarus Uprising. Not to mention, Kid Icarus Uprising was developed by Sakurai, Sakurai, who has worked on Smash Brothers, and Sakurai also worked on the latest Smash Brothers with Bandai Namco. So there's already a familiarity with Bandai Namco and the style of Sakurai games since they've worked on Smash Brothers for so many years already. Kid Icarus Uprising, if you're familiar with Sakurai games, very much is along the lines of that style of game with the menus and such. There's so much there that just feels very Sakurai, and Bandai Namco would certainly have the right staff in place to put together something that feels like a Sakurai game since they've been working on Smash Brothers for so long already. And continuing on that train of thought, Smash Brothers is a very significant multiplayer game, and Kid Icarus Uprising had a fairly substantial multiplayer mode. Bandai Namco would be the sort of developer that could put this together and make it work appropriately. And given that they already have Kid Icarus Uprising, they'd just be remaster or remaking it, making it feel more like a proper console game for the modern era. The point I'm making is that since Kid Icarus Uprising already exists, Bandai Namco has the blueprint. There's no fear of them really messing things up here, not to mention they're a pretty quality developer. So I'm not too concerned, and also maybe since Sakurai is done with Smash Ultimate, he might have a bit of a minor overseeing role with this project since he worked on Kid Icarus Uprising. The timing works out pretty well, and the description of the job listings fit this game pretty well. What is a 3D action game that needs to be remade that makes sense to be remade? Kid Icarus Uprising. And it's gotta be from a franchise that's not something Nintendo already has sort of an answer for. Like Donkey Kong, given what we've heard about the internal workings of the next Donkey Kong, or Metroid, given that there's already Retro Studios working on 2, or Mario or Zelda that already have had their own workings for their remasters and remakes and such. And would also answer to it being more of a significant developer like Bandai Namco as opposed to something smaller. In order to make Kid Icarus Uprising work and be something substantial, hiring Bandai Namco that already has a familiarity with the style of game given they've worked on Smash Brothers, I think they would be the best fit here, and I think they could do an incredible job. So is it a remaster or remake of Kid Icarus Uprising? I think there's a pretty good chance. But also, there are a number of other possibilities. I brought up a few in this video. Perhaps you guys have some other ideas in the comments below. Perhaps you agree with me, and you have other reasons as to why. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of this 3D action game that's being remade by Bandai Namco, and Nintendo is the one contracting them to do it. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.